Hey, what's up, everybody? Tarafdar from ProminentWealthGroup.com. Today, I wanted to talk about two different things. Number one, the tactical side of credit repair, and then number two is the strategic side of credit repair. Now, why would we want to talk about these two things? So, I think in a sense that a lot of people, when it comes to fixing their personal credit, are automatically thinking about tactical strategies. And this essentially means that they're looking at credit repair as an instant fix rather than a long-term goal. The purpose behind credit repair should always be long-term driven, which means it should be more strategy-driven. The more strategy-driven it is, the better that you're going to be able to create in terms of outcome. Now, in most instances, what's going to happen is you're going to probably struggle to find a common ground where you'll be able to focus to make it strategy-related. Unfortunately, at the beginning, if you're in dire need and your credit needs to be fixed ASAP, you don't have the luxury of thinking long-term or strategic. So I'm going to give you some pointers and tips today to help you essentially position yourself to be able to think more strategically rather than tactically, and think about not putting out fires, but rather how to handle the long-term infrastructure. Because if you're in a you're putting out position, you're going to be hurting yourself. You're going to be putting yourself in a hole that's going to be deeper and deeper every single time. And you're essentially going to be just another client trying to figure out what's the next financial move you'll need to make and the sacrifices you'll need to make simply because your credit is compromised, or simply because you don't have a thorough plan or an idea on what you could have done differently to position yourself the proper way so that you could have that long-term drive with personal credit. So we're going to talk about a few strategies today, and I really want you to stick around because it's going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful both short and long term, and it's also going to be helpful because you'll put yourself in a position to take this information and apply it on a regular basis. Because one thing I have to tell you, and I guess you guys already know this if you've been following me for a while, and if you've been on my channel, is when I teach about credit, I teach about sustainability. I teach about long-term infrastructure, the vision. You need to concentrate on the big picture. You should never concentrate on instant gratification. So moving from tactical minds, to a strategic mind requires a little evolution in the headspace. This evolution doesn't come easily because a lot of us are, creatures of habit. We're human beings at the end of the day, and there are certain things that we cannot control when it comes to these type of situations. So like anything else, you always have to concentrate on the best recourse when it comes to building or positioning yourself with personal credit. So I'm going to give you 3 tips. Okay, these 3 golden tips are going to help you position yourself properly to a point where you'll be positioned properly in reference to how to build the credit properly. So you'll have a strategic game plan ready when it comes to building your credit or when you're endeavoring into the credit repair space. The second position we're going to talk about is moving from a tactical standpoint when it comes to funding to the long-term strategic way of looking at funding as a recourse to leverage your credit to build a lot of wealth. And the third point we're going to finally talk about and finish our conversation with is the idea of thinking as credit as a means to build wealth by stacking it, on a one-on-one basis. And what I mean by that is you'll learn the evolutionary phases of credit and the different mechanisms of credit to be able to establish significant wealth. So the first point we talked about is, obviously trying to discount your mindset into moving into some long-term thinking and strategic thinking. That means that you have to concentrate on the way you look at your personal credit. Right now, some of the blemishes you might potentially have, some of the things that are holding you back, some negative items, which is very common because a lot of people come for credit repair. That's the first thing they want to concentrate on. They want to remove those negative items as soon as possible. So you have to analyze. You have to think about yourself as, okay, well, look, I have all these type of negative items. What constituted the mistakes, or what are some of the mistakes that I personally made that essentially put me in a position with those negative items? And how can I move away from that in terms of a strategy and a game plan to establish a playing field that's even for me, as a customer who's suffering through those negative items and some of the hurdles that I have when it comes to fixing my credit? What are some of the strategic game plans that I need to follow? And with it, how reliable is going to be that game plan? If you don't think about the reality of it, if you have to be honest with yourself, is can you stick to the game plan? It's not a question of, hey, I have a game plan, it looks nice and it's awesome and it just really wonderful, and then all of a sudden, unfortunately, because you don't have the right mindset or the attitude for it, you cannot stick to that game plan. which would mean the positioning from tactical to strategic is going to be rendered useless because you won't have anything to work with there, right? So think about some of the game plan that you have to deal with. And the biggest and most important thing really is what caused your credit to go negative in the first place? What are some of the things that you're willing to do and are willing to sacrifice to bring it back to where it's going to be reasonable, where it's going to be easy for you to get back to and say, hey, now I have an opportunity and a chance to really hold myself accountable for the actions that I'm about to take with my personal credit file, hold myself accountable for some of the moves that I need to make financially to not position myself back to where I was, because that is essentially the moves that you made led you to that negative credit spiral, that downward spiral, which is essentially holding you back from a lot of wealth in the first place. So that's the first thing you need to think about. Second thing you got to think about is, well, to hold myself accountable, the game plan that I want to execute, do I have the financial resources to be able to do so? See, a lot of people think about credit as, oh, I got extra money, but there's bills with that money. There's a monthly payment. There's all sorts of things that you have to think about, the consequences of not maintaining those relationships. And of course, ultimately resulting in a very detrimental situation for yourself on a personal level, where you'll have negative credit and connotations to it over and over again. So with that, you got to think about it. Okay, well, the game plan that I want to follow, how easy and effective will this game plan be for myself, essentially, and will I be able to hold myself accountable to that game plan? And if so, do I have the financial resources to be able to do so? That's very important when you're dealing with personal credit and especially credit transformation. The second thing we got to talk about is the shift in mindset from tactical to strategic to long-term. And long-term essentially means that you have to be willing and able to put yourself in a situation where you're like, hey, I can see myself leveraging credit in a means to build wealth, but at the same time, I'm willing to make the sacrifices that are necessary to give up instant gratification, because that is what's eating away our wealth. And then that's just the reality, because we see an opportunity, we want to constantly jump into it. We see something so good, so irresistible, that we cannot hold ourselves back. And we tend to have a situation where we jump right into that thing that we want to buy, or that good that you want to acquire. And unfortunately, it's not the best thing for you. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the mindset shift from tactical to strategic when it comes to credit repair, there's a level of evolution that your mind has to go through. That evolution has to be that it becomes second nature for you to be able to make the necessary sacrifices to be able to take that information and analyze situations for yourself where you'll be like, hey, you know what, I can live without this. I can actually live without this, and it's actually good for me, and I'm happy without it in the first place. Now, although it looks nice and fancy and it looks attractive and it's an irresistible offer, I'm willing to make that small sacrifice for the bigger game. And that's the evolution that your mind has to go through. So why am I saying this is because a lot of people will spend money and they'll spend their credit and they'll try to stack up on certain things that they don't necessarily need. And having the mindset and an evolution in your mind to be able to give up that instant gratification and work long-term and have that long-term thinking is a critical part of having credit work for you strategically rather than tactically. Because tactically is like, okay, well, I want to buy this today. You go out there and you buy it. Strategically, it's like, I can give this up because if I can keep my credit stable, I can underwrite for something more reasonable that'll give me a lot of revenue, and I'm going to build a lot of profit down the road. So strategically is what you should be thinking about. So that evolution needs to happen. And sometimes forming habits around credit and to be able to give up the instant gratification and work more strategically requires practice. It requires a certain time frame to make yourself comfortable around the uncomfortable, essentially, right? Because at the beginning, for sure, you're going to be tempted. You're going to have all sorts of things that you want to access, and you want to buy all sorts of products and services, but put yourself in a situation where you can say, you know what, I want to invest in myself. So not having to spend it means that I am keeping it, which essentially means that you're actually investing in your strategic credit situation rather than tactical. So don't spend, and don't be, consumed by the shiny object syndrome, and try to hold yourself back and create that evolution in your mind to be able to go from tactical thinking to strategic thinking, and that's going to help you, right? And then the third point I wanted to really point out to you guys, and I think this is a very critical point as we finalize our conversation here today, is think about credit as a means to stack your wealth. See, a lot of people know about the credit partnership programs, but what you don't know is that you're actually making passive income with me. And the way it works is I look at deals all the time, especially now with COVID-19. Obviously there's a lot of businesses out there that need assistance and perhaps even exit. The problem is a lot of these businesses, unfortunately, don't necessarily have the financial means to exit. And I'm being serious about that. They cannot even file bankruptcy because it costs money. So what ends up happening is they end up walking away. And they're also in the negative cash flow situation, so they're actually losing money every single day. And I'm constantly communicating with those owners who are addressing their issues with me. And I'm always talking to them about the fact that, look, I'm probably the best alternative you have to bankruptcy. I'll take your problems on and I'll try to restructure it to make it more profitable for you, so that we can look at the big long-term gain. So the same situation here is your credit should be used for the long-term gain. It should never be used, like I said, for the instant gratification. So stack your wealth, build up your credit, keep a solid score so that you can use situations like mine where I take credit partners, get some financing behind those businesses, restructure them, and make the value of that company worth more than the actual debt, which in turn is profit for us. And of course, the company will service that debt in addition to you making some cash flow alongside me as credit partners. But that's how you stack your wealth. Now, you can do this for real estate, you can do this for businesses, you can do this for many different situations and strategies, but you cannot do it if you don't have the first and second point figured out. You cannot do it if your first point of being more financially responsible and delineating yourself from some of the challenges that cause negative credit in the first place and being able to put those fires out. And then the second point being you have to think more long-term and strategically, and that mindset shift needs to happen so that you can ultimately stack that wealth to be able to position yourself to go out and do a great amount of things. So I hope this video was helpful, a little bit long, but very important because I wanted to get this point across to you guys. And you'll be able to make financial moves that will help you long-term if you follow the advice that I just gave you guys. With that said, if you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing and turning the notifications on to all, so every time there's videos like these, you'll be first to know. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafdar. Catch you guys on the next one. Bye for now.